Welcome to Cape Fear Business Roundtable. I'm Frank Williams, and we have Natalie English, CEO of the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce, with us today. Natalie, welcome. And before we jump in, I do want to mention our two sponsors, which are my two businesses. Pioneer Strategies is a public relations and communication firm, and Pioneer Strategies can help you if you need assistance with PR strategy, need a new brand identity, website, digital advertising, or social media management. And you can check them out at pioneerstrategies.com. And the second sponsor is my other business, Pioneer Specialties, which is a promotional products firm. We have access to over 1 million products from 4,300 suppliers worldwide. So we can search for things that you don't even know to look for, and we'll manage the whole process so that you can spend your time doing things that are much more important, like running your business and bringing in new clients. And the website for Pioneer Specialties is pioneerspecialties.promo, and that's not a typo. It's .promo is the domain extension. So please check out Pioneer Strategies and Pioneer Specialties. And with that, we'll jump right on in. Natalie, thank you again for joining us. I've had quite a few guests from my side of the bridge, so it's nice to have one from the other side of a bridge that I'm sure we will talk about at some point today because I know
Sweet.
you. But this area is obviously a fast growing community and has seen a lot of people moving here from a lot of places. Tell us where you're from and how you wound up in the Wilmington area.
Wow. So I was born in Cabarrus County, only because my father was in broadcasting school in Charlotte at the time. And so we then moved back to my parents' home county, which is Halifax County.
Okay.
And so that's where I grew up in Roanoke Rapids, went to Roanoke Rapids High School, a phenomenal opportunity to just really learn a lot of things while I was growing up and have some great friends and all. But I knew early on that Halifax County was not likely where I would live my
Right.
adult life. Just didn't see the opportunities there. I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to major in chemical engineering from the Champion International, that the then paper mill was owned by Champion at the
Right.
time, and they were trying to recruit more women. That was in the mid 80s, and so I went to NC State, the only place to get a chemical engineering degree in
Right.
North Carolina. So and loved the experience. So spent the first year and a half of my college life really focused on the basics for an engineering degree, so a lot of math and a lot of
Right.
science, and then just realized it probably wasn't going to give me the opportunities for gab that I so like to have. And so
I never
uh,
would have guessed.
I also, in high school and college, actually had worked for my father. He took his broadcasting certificate and went back to Halifax County and had become the general manager of a group of radio stations in
Okay.
Southeastern Virginia and Northeastern North Carolina. So I got to be a DJ. I got to cut commercials. I got to sell commercials and ads and things. I got to do the color commentary when he was doing play-by-play for high school and little league
Interesting.
sports. Yes,
Are
and
there
so it
any
was.
clips of this out there that we can add at the end of this podcast?
There are not, well, there are, but they're on like reel-to-reel tapes.
I do not
And
have the ability to convert
I
that.
know, and my father passed away a couple years ago, so my sisters and I are still trudging through all of the boxes. But I do intend to try to put some of those things on a tape version that we all can actually play these days. But and so then changed my major to communications. I had a phenomenal time. Was able to get a part-time job with North Carolina Public Television, and
Okay.
they had at the time a nightly news show on the legislature. So I started following the reporters around the legislative building and the legislative office building and watching lobbyists. When I graduated, I couldn't find a job in TV. I was going to be a TV reporter and an anchor eventually, and couldn't find a job in that space. So took a job as an assistant to a lobbyist, created a newsletter for her. So
Interesting.
kept my communications background going even as an administrative assistant, and then just sort of fell into the lobbying sector, an advocate, but
Right.
multiple clients through a law firm, still did a lot of writing and communicating to those clients. The lawyer I worked for the most was unbelievably smart. He also went to NC State undergrad and Harvard Law School. So he was so smart at times, he couldn't speak to normal human beings. We teased him about it. So I took his words and turned them into ones that regular people
You were
could
his translator.
understand. Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I fell into advocacy. that led to an opportunity to represent a business association that happened to be a group of manufacturers that used chemicals in their processes. And it was amazing how those first couple of years with a heavy math and science basics that I could understand the compounds we were talking about and the impacts they could have on the environment and how the businesses were doing the right things to not impact the environment as negatively. And so that just sort of fell into, for me, this opportunity to combine two things that I'm really, really good at, and that is communications and advocacy. I count those as two because I think a good advocate has to be a good communicator.
Right.
But then also, I'm a Malcolm Gladwell connector. If you've read his definition, I am it to the nth degree. My ability to connect people to the other people and resources that they need, simply because I've had this phenomenal career that has led me down so many different pathways where there are many people that I've had the opportunity to meet. So that led to the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, where I spent almost 20 years.
Wow.
With a 3-year stint in the middle-ish at Goodrich Corporation. The corporate headquarters was in Charlotte, and they recruited me to come help them with community relations, managing the Goodrich Foundation, and some North Carolina governmental affairs. And so it was a great opportunity for me to actually be a chamber member and understand from that side of the fence. And then when I was asked to come back to the Charlotte Chamber and to lead all of the governmental affairs department, that's when I realized that the chamber is where I belong. I believe it's my calling, because it just brings together those two things that I can do so well. And it also allows me to have what I believe is a very positive impact on the community and the region where I get to do my job.
Did you actually work in the paper mill at any point, going back to that, or?
I did not. I got to tour it once, but I never did make it back. My friend from high school, who we joined the program at the same time, she still works at the paper mill in Roanoke Rapids. So
and we'll talk about Roanoke Rapids later. I had a couple of fraternity brothers from there, so we'll talk about that one off camera.
Sounds good.
But interesting, the parallels. You and I have never had this conversation, but my dad worked at the paper mill here in Riegelwood for 30 some years, and I worked out there the summer right after I graduated from high school and the summer after my freshman year of college. Started out as a computer science major, thinking I wanted to be a computer engineer. And like you, I ran into all the math stuff, and I'm like, this is just not for me. And initially was a business major for a little while. And candidly, most of my business teachers didn't have any business experience. So I switched to communication at NC State because they had so many great part-time lecturers that were working in it full-time and had 30 years of experience at IBM and all this real world experience. And I remember one of them saying, I'm not sure what they call this in the textbook, but here's how we did it. And there was so much reality in that. And
exactly.
So, interesting parallels there. But well, before we dig into work, what is your favorite non-work thing to do here in this part of the state? Thing to do, place to go, place to eat?
Oh, wow. Gosh, the place to eat has become unbelievably difficult to say, because we have so many good restaurants in this region. It's become, I believe, the one of the capitals of food in North Carolina. I think Wilmington and Asheville have the best restaurants personally. There's some good ones in Charlotte and Raleigh and the Triad. But
don't forget about Calabash too.
Exactly. That's what I mean. The
all
whole
the way down.
Yeah.
Southport. I mean, there's so many little places that no one would know are here.
Exactly. And the views from so many of them having water. There's just something about being able to see water every day. So I would say that my favorite off-duty activity would probably be walking and or sitting and reading on a beach in one of the 3 counties. It's my place to center and to be in the middle of nature and God's creation, and listening and smelling and touching is just amazing for me.
Yeah, it's even though I don't like the heat, the sand and the waves can just do something to calm your whole soul.
They really can.
Well, jumping over talking about the chamber, obviously there are a number of chambers in this part of the state. We've got 3 in Brunswick County. I know I think there's at least one more in New Hanover County and some in Pender. But you guys are obviously the largest chamber in this area. Tell us about the Wilmington Chamber and how it differs from the other smaller chambers.
Sure. Well, I think I can tell you about the Wilmington Chamber, and I think I can help understand how we're different. Our mission is to create and promote prosperity by cultivating business growth. So the things that we work on are aimed at assisting business owners into continuing to grow. Therefore, our economy grows, and there are increasing opportunities for people to grow their own prosperity. Right. And so it runs the gamut, but everything falls into sort of a bucket, I'll call it. So we advocate on behalf of business, and that's with policymakers, yes, at the local, state, and federal level. And it's also with the community, because it's always been odd to me how people who aren't the business owner or necessarily one of the business leaders don't see themselves as a business person. They have a job in a business, right. And even if it's a government job or a not-for-profit job, those are just different types of businesses, right? And
absolutely.
And so it always kind of makes me curious about why people don't see themselves, or they presume that business is bad. So we also advocate with the community, not only about the good things business is doing in our community, but also about the things that will help those businesses grow and offer even more jobs for potentially their family members or their friends or family who might move to the region in the future. So we advocate. We also create those Malcolm Gladwell connection opportunities through all kinds of ways, right? Through events that are in person. Some of them are small and intimate and member only, building really great connections for business leads and things. Some of them are really large, like our annual meeting or our economic summit, where we are trying to bring not only content to the membership who attends about whatever the topic for that event is, but also to offer those connection opportunities. And then community development, talent development, and workforce development. So the development arm of the Wilmington Chamber is deeply involved in leadership development. Our Leadership Wilmington program has been in place for several decades. And that's traditional, you can call it leadership town. Whatever town you're in, there's likely to be one. Then we've created a shorter version of that, mostly aimed at people who are new to Wilmington. We want to grab people and keep them sticky. We want them to move here, get the job that they have, and then want to stay here because we need the talent. And so that's called Encounter Wilmington, which led to an Interns Encounter Wilmington program that we offer for the college interns that come to town. One of my favorite development programs we're in year 3 is called the Career and Leadership Development Academy, and it is a middle school starting point. We take all the 7th graders in New Hanover County schools and expose them to the 8 industry sectors that New Hanover County has said are the fastest growing. And our aim there is, again, to help these students see all the possibilities, not just to assume doctor, lawyer, teacher, right? Or social media influencer or NFL player, as some of the kids say. And so they go through that with their exposure to all those in the 7th grade. In the 8th grade, we help them target a couple that they really feel an affinity or have an aptitude for, and they focus a little bit more. And that then helps them with their North Carolina required 8th grade career plan that then leads into high school and course choices and things that can keep them in their pathway to the job that they like. And this exposure to the industry partners across the region, it's been fun to see their participation and their reaction. I think real relationships are being made. It's anecdotal. I don't have any real proof to show you, but I do believe that we're building these relationships. So as we, our culture becomes more accepting of people who choose not to go to college, it's a path. And it's not an easy path. In some ways, it's harder because of our culture and the expectation that everybody goes to college. And in other ways, it's easier because you get through school quicker and you can start to make a living and support your family
Absolutely.
faster. And you don't have debt traditionally when you take that shorter path to get closer to a career opportunity. So we're excited about what that is doing in the middle school. We are now 3 years in. So we're about 3 years or so from how many of those students decide to stay here. And then we're 7 years or so from how many of them come back to New
Right.
Hanover County. And was this an opportunity to provide that stickiness that we're looking for workforce age people in our region? So that's awesome. We also have talent development pathways specifically in the healthcare industry and in the talent space that we're trying to help those employers identify and develop the talent. And then on the community development side, it's very important for us that we are investing the time and energy into developing the things in the community that are attractive to people to live and work here, so that our employers, the businesses, have the talent in the community
Right.
that wants to stay here. I could say, Project Grace, where in downtown Wilmington, you have this development that's going to be a phenomenal museum and library. We could talk about the infrastructure investments in Brunswick County and the developments that are coming on to house the people who are moving here. And what I know is a difficult decision on that side of the river to be progressive about those additional housing units. Affordable and accessible housing in this region is a big issue, and it will impact employers if we can't
Absolutely.
create enough. And so I commend the elected officials on the other side of the river from New Hanover for allowing and permitting the developments that are coming online now. We also care deeply about transportation infrastructure. And as you mentioned, I have to talk about the replacement of that bridge, the one of two that connects New Hanover County to Brunswick County, and that's the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge Replacement Project. It is imperative that we replace the current bridge because it's getting past its life cycle. So we have to replace it, and to replace it with something that is less than what we have now, which is, in my opinion, less than what we have now. So now we have 135-foot clearance.
Right.
In my opinion, we shouldn't lose that, because if we do, we potentially lose economic growth opportunities north of that bridge. And we're having
Absolutely.
that debate specifically in Wilmington proper about that. And so we'll keep working. Hopefully, we're supposed to have heard from the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard about their minimum height, but I don't think we've heard anything yet. So I'm anxiously awaiting that guidance.
Yeah, that'll be interesting
yeah.
news. And you covered a lot in that. And I can, I can tell you a few of the things, being members of multiple chambers, that
Right.
you do that the other chambers don't. A lot of the smaller chambers do not engage in the advocacy component at all. And you mentioned it's not only with policymakers but also with the community. I think that's important because I will hear people that I know are generally supportive of business. They want small business to succeed, and they'll say, "I support policy X," and I'm like, "You do realize how many people that's going to put out of business?" Well, no, they haven't thought about it. All they've thought about is some soundbite they heard on Facebook or Nextdoor.com, which is, we know the great fount of all knowledge is Nextdoor.com. But I think that, and also the workforce development, and what you talked about the middle schoolers. I mean, by the time they get to the 11th grade, a lot of times the ship has sailed as far as what they're going to do. And something else you hit on, when I was in school, everything was, you have to go to college, you have to
Right.
go to get a white collar job, and it was almost implied that the people who didn't do that weren't as smart as the ones who did, and that
Exactly.
did a tremendous disservice to so many people. And at that point, there was this often the stereotype that you went to community college if you couldn't get into college.
Right.
Community colleges are amazing, and I know people who've gone to community college and come out of there making more money than somebody with a 4-year degree. And as you said, they don't have debt. And we need people who are willing to do and qualified to do the trade type jobs. I mean, I can tell you it's hard to find, if you want to make money, go be a plumber.
Right.
If you want to make money, go be a building inspector.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know that there are many. I saw a great meme, and the child said, I decided to major in philosophy. And the dad said, great, they just opened up that new philosophy factory right down the road. I think it's so important that we direct students to
Yeah,
things that are going to actually have a chance of helping them make a living and support their family.
right.
And I could,
A minor in philosophy or
yeah,
history, or if that's something you're passionate about, I agree. Philosophers are great. We've they're also a dime a dozen, honestly.
and these days you can go on social media and proclaim yourself to be one, and
Exactly.
that's a whole different podcast. We won't get too far off into that. Well, you've talked a little bit about this, but what anything else you want to say about your chamber's goals and priorities moving forward?
Yeah, so when we're in addition to all those programs that I talked about, we want to expand on the number of industries that we are helping identify, develop, recruit, and retain talent for. So I mentioned healthcare
Right.
and tech, and so we convene groups of industry business owners and explore. Are you ready? Are you finding a challenge? And as this talent cliff, which we've been waiting for. I don't know if you remember in the 08, 09, right before the recession, we were being told, oh, we're about to face this cliff and all the baby boomers are going to start retiring. And then lucky for employers, in some ways, we hit the recession because it significantly
Right.
delayed those retirees. Well, the pandemic started it back again. By that time, people had refilled their 401k
Right.
and retirement accounts, and they were ready to make that decision. And generations that have followed that have been significantly smaller. So we don't have enough actual people to fill all of the jobs. And so we want to make sure
I hear
we're
that
helping.
everywhere.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. So that's one of our goals. Another goal is, we have been fortunate as a Chamber of Commerce to have be on property that sits on the Cape Fear River, literally, right? We're riverfront. Our building was built over 30 years ago. It is not as conducive to the services this Chamber of Commerce is offering and would like to offer more of. And so we are in the exploration stages of what does this property look like for the future of the greater Wilmington Chamber of Commerce and the work that we do for the entire region. We do recognize that we offer things that are different from our partners in Brunswick, Pender, and even New Hanover County, in Carolina Beach, Curry Beach, and in Wrightsville Beach, those chambers. And yet we don't believe that just because we sit in New Hanover County that our line stops at New Hanover County as far as the advocacy and other development opportunities that exist. And so we're not coming over the county lines to poach membership.
You can move your headquarters over here.
I kind of like my spot. I don't see one on the other side of the river right now, but we want to ensure that the greater Wilmington area, which is this whole region, continues to grow, and that we are advocating on behalf of the entire region.
Well, everybody they think about their community, but issues don't stop at artificial boundaries. I mean,
Nope.
now the river is not an artificial boundary; it is a natural boundary, but still, issues. People, a business comes to Brunswick County, people in New Hanover County come work here, vice versa. You put a business across I know people who worked in Columbus County at the paper mill that would drive from Pender, Robinson, New Hanover. And with 140 now, it's so much easier to get to some of these places.
It is.
My sister lives just in Delco on the other side of the Columbus County line, and she can be in Porter's Neck in 25 minutes.
Wow.
That would have been an hour drive.
Sure.
Easily with the traffic years ago. So, which goes back to the importance of transportation that you already talked about. Well, you've already, again, touched on some of this, but what challenges do you see our local business community facing moving forward? You've mentioned transportation and workforce. Anything else that you want to say about those, or any others you want to mention?
Well, I think, they all wrap up, right? It's so access to the talent that they need to do the
Absolutely.
work that they do. And so that includes access to housing. And in our region, it's at every level. It's not just that traditional affordable housing that we all think about, or housing for the unhoused. It is also every single level, all the way up to the multi-million-dollar homes, because if we don't have enough of those for the people who've grown their income to move up, then
Right.
that $500,000 house isn't available for the people who own the 350, and so it trickles down. So we have got to work on housing stock, right? It's true economics. It's supply and demand, and housing is
Absolutely.
as expensive as it is here because of the lack of supply. So that then leads to, if talent can't afford to live here because we don't have the housing, then that's an issue. You mentioned transportation. That's an issue. Another is, it's not a traditional business issue, but it's access to childcare.
I hear that
And
a lot.
yeah, and so especially as we were coming out of the pandemic, we saw that two working parent families, one was having to choose to stay home because coming out of the pandemic, there was just a tremendous hit to childcare
Right.
organizations, institutions, and things that because of everybody staying home and didn't need the childcare resource, and so they weren't able to stay open. So we have a real shortage of seats in that. And again, it doesn't you don't think about it as a business issue. And it is, though. If there's somebody
Absolutely.
sitting at home who's of workforce age and they're not able to go work in a business, then that's one less person who's talented who's in the workforce. It is
Absolutely.
a challenge. So I think those, and then continuing to maintain the quality of life that we've all become accustomed to. The reasons most of us have moved here is because this is a beautiful part of the state and the country, and nobody wants to overdevelop this region. We want to continue to enjoy those natural resources and not to negatively impact them. And I know that there's a balance to
Yeah, absolutely.
providing the access to housing and the access to the jobs that are here, and to keep those employers here.
You mentioned the supply and demand on the housing. I was at an event recently, and I actually had someone say the following to me: "We need to quit building any more houses until we get the price of housing under control." And
It's
your
just,
reaction is, when I tell that, is the same one I get, because it just does not work that way.
it does.
And it's not only a supply issue, it's a demand issue,
It
because
is.
you had people, and to me, it's hard for me to imagine somebody spending $500,000 on a house they have not seen. But they were doing it. They were buying houses 500,000 and up, sight unseen, based on a virtual tour. I mean, you could create a virtual tour on AI. So I just don't get that. I don't like to buy shoes without putting them on, much less a house. But that's how the demand was. And you'd build a $200,000 house and somebody pays 350 for it.
Yep.
And also, one of the challenges, we had the American Rescue Plan Act, which put a lot of money into a lot of projects, but you had the same number of contractors doing a whole lot more work. So guess where their prices went? And then with inflation, guess where the cost of all the supplies went? So it costs more to build these houses. And
Yeah.
I got into a debate with someone, and they kept talking about affordable housing. I said, I'm not talking about affordable housing. I'm talking about housing affordability. And those are two different things. And my definition of it is when the market creates conditions where the average person can afford to buy a house.
Yes.
That's my
Yeah.
simple definition.
Right.
And
Agreed. And the regulatory environment also
absolutely.
creates cost to housing that I think are especially on the local level, right? We have well-meaning local elected officials who would love to see the developer building the project to also build sidewalks of a certain width all the way through their development, and that adds to the cost of the development, which then increases the cost of the individual housing unit. And that's not to say I don't believe we should have sidewalks everywhere to keep people safe. And we need to keep housing accessible.
And I think the biggest thing there is, if someone who's never worked in a business where they actually had responsibility for P&L, they don't understand how those things affect the cost of it. And it's one thing to work in a business; it's another thing to run a business. And
Exactly.
there have been weeks where I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm going to pay my employees, and then after that, I'm going to figure out how to buy food.
Right. I
Because
know.
and
People
that's
don't get it.
thankfully
I
it's
know.
not like that often, but I think
Right.
every single person I know who owns a business has had that day.
Yes.
And people say, why didn't you buy that? Because it cost more money than it was worth.
Right.
And everything you do increases the cost back to your client. And that's probably another whole different podcast we could do.
Agree.
But was there anything else you want to say about your chamber before we start to wrap this up?
I have to say that I believe I have the best chamber team. We spend a lot of time with our colleagues in the two Carolinas, the Carolinas Association of Chamber of
Right.
Commerce Executives, and we spend a lot of time with our national partners, or our chamber partners across the country through the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. I sit on the board and executive committee of both organizations, and I got to tell you, even comparing to the larger chambers in both states, especially, we have talent in this building that is how we are impacting this region in the positive ways that we are. They are each individually talented in the job that they are filling, and also as a team. It's so much fun to be the chamber leader over here and get to just watch them go. Give them an idea.
Absolutely.
Or ask them to accomplish a task, and they run circles around it. So I have to share that with everyone.
And that's so important. One person cannot do it all. I mean, I've been involved with chambers ranging from the Raleigh chamber when I lived up there, which had more staff than I think some small towns have residents, to a chamber that has one person on staff that has to do everything, and one person can only do so much. And the better team you build, if you build the right team, you can focus on doing CEO things.
Yes.
And let them do the
exactly.
things they need to do.
Exactly.
I'm reading a Navy SEAL book called Extreme Ownership right now, which is talking a lot about the importance of the leader being able to delegate so that they can see things from that higher level. Because if they're in the weeds, they're so in the weeds, then they miss the things they're really supposed to be looking for. And I think sounds like you've got a team that's allowing you to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as a result, we've seen some pretty significant growth in the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce investments, so that allow us to then grow the programming that is having a positive impact
Absolutely.
on our region.
Well, one last question about that. What do you love about what you do that you haven't already told us?
Oh, wow. So, gosh, I love the impact that the organization I get to lead has on people in our region. I love when I go to bed at night, I lie down and reflect on the day, and no matter how hard the day was, no matter how exhausted I am, I'm always, gosh, it's not, I don't want to say proud, because it's not that. It's just this warm feeling of I get to be a part of work that is making
Absolutely.
people's lives better.
And I've heard people say, and it's not that I have to go to work, it's that I get to go to work. And
Yeah.
that's, if you have the ability to say that, then you've got a good position.
Agree.
Well, I like to always start to close it out with any advice you would give to people who are up and coming. So the first question on that is, what have you learned during the course of your career that you wish you'd known the day you started?
Oh, wow. So let's see. That would probably, it would be that that truly relationships are at the heart of all work. That no single person can be effective, no matter how skilled, how smart they are. That it is about relationships. I didn't know that as much early on, and I'm an overachiever, so of course, I could do it all. And quickly, well, not quickly enough, figured out that I needed other people
Absolutely.
to be as successful as I could
And
be.
if someone was contacting you today and said, I'm fresh out of college and I want to be CEO of the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce in 30 years, what advice would you give them starting out?
Yeah, I would encourage them to intern at a chamber of commerce. I actually have an employee now who interned for me in 2019 and 2020 here
Cool.
at the chamber. She was a student at UNC Wilmington. She left the community and then wanted to come back, and I just happened to have a job
Awesome.
available. And then to focus a lot on interpersonal skills and communication skills, and attend every event that you possibly can, because the job is extremely social. No matter what your job is at the chamber, there's still a very
Absolutely.
Deep expectation for social interaction and interpersonal interactions that that are required. So those would be the things that I would have someone focus on early, and then those are skills that will work well in any role, but you can't be successful as a chamber CEO without them.
And I think they're getting lost in the world of technology today. People like to hide behind these things.
Exactly.
And they, you hear the term keyboard warrior.
Yes.
Sidebar question: how important are writing skills?
I think they're still extremely important. And it's not, it's not the flowery writing. It's concise, get
Absolutely.
to the point, and in an intelligent way with the right punctuation. You're not texting.
And correct spelling.
And correct spelling. You're not texting. And in fact, I have a preferred communication with people. I don't want to be asked for a meeting via LinkedIn because I usually don't have my calendar in front of me when I'm looking at LinkedIn. So I always ask people to email me. So if you're asking for a meeting with me, email's the best way to get it. If you are, if you're my buddy and you want to talk about where we're going to go have that glass of wine after work, text me. If you're asking me to weigh in on something work related, it's a phone call or an email for me. Now I know younger people want to transition that communication style, and I can do it, but I don't want to.
And one of the things I impress is, communicate the way our client wants to be communicated with.
That's true. Good point.
If you've got a client that doesn't text and you're texting them, they may not see it.
Exactly.
A good example of that, years ago, there was somebody who didn't show up for an event that somebody thought they were coming to. And they said, well, I sent you a calendar invite. And they said, I use a paper calendar. Calendar invite didn't help. Now that person now has an electronic calendar, but this was 10 years ago.
Sure.
And they were using a paper calendar, and the person just assumed that because they had email, they had a calendar on it. And I've had people, I have multiple emails. I've had people send me emails or calendar invites at the address that is not where my calendar is.
Right.
And so, it's important to know how a person wants to be communicated with. And
Absolutely.
Well, final question is, in what types of books do you like to read, and are you currently reading?
Yeah, so it's always, fiction is my favorite way to finish a day, just to completely get out of my head.
Get your mind out of work, yeah.
Exactly. Get my mind out of work and relax. And right now I'm reading a book called Tom Lake. It's it's all fiction, and it's just intriguing story that I'm pretty deep into and can't wait to get back to it every evening. And then on the professional side, I'm reading some books. There's a series of books around an operating system. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, and hoping to implement EOS at the chamber. We'll have to get together. Yeah, traction and so I really want to try to implement that here at the chamber. I'm not looking to retire soon, but I'm getting close to that part of my career.
We get closer every day.
Every single day. And so I want to make sure that I've left this organization prepared no matter who sits in this particular seat.
The Traction book, if you read the second one, Get a Grip.
That's where I'm getting ready to.
I just finished that one about a month ago. And it's interesting how they did that book, because the first one obviously explains the whole system. The second one is basically a fiction book with a fictitious company implementing the system.
Interesting.
And I've never seen a business book done like that. But I actually learned more about the system reading that, because since it's, a business book, I'll give you some spoilers, but they had lots of personalities in there. And I will, after you get introduced to all the team that's implementing it, tell me which one you think will get fired.
I will.
Because they put every kind of personality in there. The one who loves it, the one who's afraid of it, the one who hates it.
Yep.
And I'm looking to implement some form of it here, maybe not exactly like they have, because it's, you have to adapt it, but I think there's so many principles from it. It's a great system, and I know a lot of PR firms have implemented it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a number of chambers across the country who have, and that's where we heard about it at one of our national associations.
Awesome.
And our staff culture, we have a statement that says we want to be a pace setter chamber, that we want other chambers to look to us for the innovations and how to do it well and right.
Absolutely.
And so this is one of those ways.
Have you ever read a book called Culture by Design?
Yes.
And that's another one that we've implemented some. We've actually done our core principles as action statements like that. And my whole team at the time went through and we developed probably 27 or 28 of them, but then I'm going to convert those into the type of value statements this book uses. They won't go away, but then I'll tie them together because so much of that stuff can be related to each other. And I'm glad I did Culture by Design before I read the EOS book.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
And
it's time for us. We last did it when there were 6 of us. There are effective Monday, this coming Monday, there will be 16 of us.
wow,
So
I didn't
it's
realize
time
you had
to
that
do it
many. Yeah,
again. Yeah, so we've grown pretty tremendously.
absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. I think this has been a great discussion. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
Thank you so much for your time and all that you do, Frank, in the region. And thank you for your 2 companies' memberships in the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate that
Absolutely. I've got an
investment.
invoice over here to renew one of them. I need to get that in soon.
Well, I hope that we don't have an invoice for the work that we do with Pioneer Specialties, but if we do, I'll make
well,
sure it gets paid.
I'm sure if there's one due, Lori will send it. I can guarantee you that. I can
We
guarantee
will
you
pay
that.
it, I promise. Thank
And
you so much
yeah,
for that partnership.
well, thank you for joining us today, and for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to follow us, you can do so at capefearbusiness.com. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all the other platforms, and we look forward to having you join us again next week. Thank you.